addiction is similar to diabetes and someone having cancer and like a disease. Nobody looks at it like that. They look at it like a moral failing, that this person is bad.
We will say we want to stop, we will desire to stop, and then we will cheat here and we will cheat there, and that will be seen as a big betrayal.
So, as a society, do you think we're headed in the right direction when it comes to talking about the language of addiction, the stigma?
We've seen enough and more people who do not want to accept that either their spouse has a problem, either their children have a problem.
There are approximately, according to official studies done in India, 160 million people in India who use alcohol. To me, that's an understatement. 1 in 5 males in India will consume alcohol.
Women who consume approximately one alcohol drink daily increase breast cancer risk by 5 to 10%. A man having a problem is looked at as a problem, but a woman having a problem is looked at.
Three essentials, right? The willpower that is critical, the strategy. The third is
One in 20 Indians likely suffer alcohol use disorder, and this is according to a recent survey. That's around 70 million people with a negative relationship with alcohol. In today's episode of Pursuing Passions, I'm speaking to 3 individuals who have come together to not only raise awareness about this crisis, but to actively do something about it. So, who are you and what do you do?
So I'm Aditya Maheshwari. I am a life coach by profession. Having had a lived experience with alcohol addiction uh, and having lived it, 10 years ago I met Doc over here, and he really helped me on my journey to recovery. And at that point, what we saw is that India as a country did not have any safe space, so to speak. And for the last 5 years or so, we've been talking about building something together. And about a year ago, the opportunity finally presented itself, and we built this space called Mindset, Wellness, and Healing. The idea behind this is we wanted a safe space for everyone struggling with any sort of alcohol or substance use dependence, right? It is one of the most misunderstood sort of diseases out there. It is something which is, and I'll let Dr. Azhar talk a little bit more about it, but the idea of why we came together and what we've built is basically this all stemmed from having a safe space to help people with alcohol and substance abuse issues.
Dr. Azhar Hakim, welcome. You're one of the leading voices in alcohol addiction. What mission are you on and why?
leading voices in addiction. That's very flattering. Thanks for having me on. Um, yeah, so I'm Dr. Azhar Hakim. I'm an addiction specialist. I'm a medical doctor, and I'm also a recovering addict and alcoholic, uh, which brings me to the mission. Um, I grew up in what would seem like a very normal family, right? And somewhere along the line, I discovered alcohol and I discovered a whole bunch of substances, which I thought was going to be a lot of fun and party in my life. And it was for a certain amount of time. And I don't know when that line turned into from recreation into abuse and into dependence. And it was very difficult in those periods in that time. And it was very difficult. This was way back in the 90s to find help. And my journey when I actually got the help that I needed, right, made me realize that because I'd come to a point in which I didn't think this was doable. I thought my substance use and my alcohol use had got to the point in which I somehow had to make peace that, this is how my life is going to be and whatever consequences are going to be there are going to be there. But when I realized that it was possible to get help, right, it kind of became a abiding passion of mine that I really want to do this. I really want to help people. And at that time, I'd finished my med school. I wasn't doing medicine. I wasn't practicing as a doctor. I was working in the corporate world. But I did a full pivot then. I was in my mid-30s and I said, no, this is what I want to do with my life. So I went abroad and I got my master's. And I studied what we call the treatment of co-occurring disorders, which is when a person has not only an addiction, but also a concurrent mental health disorder. Um, and But it was my experience of having gone through that and the difficulty I found getting help, to difficulty of being able to explain what I was going through, to be understood. That's what I said, okay, this needs to be available to more people, because what I didn't realize even at that time, there was treatment available. It wasn't that people didn't know what to do about addiction, but it was one of those really shameful and stigmatized conditions in which you don't talk about, and your families live in shame, and you live in shame, and all your relationships are a mess. And I realized it didn't have to be this way, right? So that's how the journey started. And then I went abroad, I studied there, I lived there for many years, I came back. And then I ran into Mr. Maheshwari, who for the last 5 years has been eating my head about, Doc, we have to do something together. And I think I was at that point in which I said, okay, we really have to. So I'm very, very grateful to the idea that 15 years ago when I came back from the US, right, mental health counseling was like, I didn't even know whether I have a career here. So it's very heartening to know now people talk about going to counseling and therapy on a regular basis. But the idea of having a program of recovery, which is just beyond the individual sessions, that you need a community, you need group, there's a whole bunch of elements that go into addiction recovery. And when Aditya talked to me about it, that we should do something together, that I thought was really exciting, because we have some elements now in India, but we don't have what I think is really necessary and what the science shows to us is really necessary. So that was the mission. I'm 60 years old. I don't know how long I'll be here, but it'll be fun to do something.
The road is long.
Acha, that way. Is that supposed to be encouraging?
Encouraging. 60 plus 60 plus 60.
I call it level 6.
Okay. And Ahaana, where does your passion and purpose come into the story of addiction and alcohol?
Hi, I'm Ahaana Vohra and I work at Mindset as an addiction counselor with Azhar and Aditya. And just like them, I'm in recovery myself. I love what I do. And it's been a tough journey reaching the other side of from active addiction into sobriety. And I know what it takes to get to this side. And I feel like for me, the passion lies in helping someone and understanding their story, because I have lived that experience myself.
So I'm going to open the question to you, Dr. Azhar. What is addiction?
We are now in a day and age in which we just bandy the word around, right? Addiction till it's lost all meaning. If you look at the scientific definition of it, right, what they would call an addiction in the DSM is the diagnostic manual for all psychiatric conditions. Addiction is a condition in which you indulge in any behavior despite negative consequences, right? That's a very broad term. And when we say what happens is how people are able to do this is that they minimize or deny the consequences. Right? And there are 3 elements that will go in through any addiction. One, there is a preoccupation in your mind about using the substance, or it doesn't have to be a substance. Now we know there are behavioral addictions like gaming and gambling, porn, etc. Right? So the first component is a mental preoccupation. I'm thinking about when can I do this next, right? And first it could be 1 month, then it can be 3 weeks, and then 2 weeks, and then 1 week, and then the frequency of which I need to indulge this becomes shorter and shorter, but I'm constantly thinking about it. I used to have a t-shirt that says, I would rather be drinking, right? That was my default. So I wouldn't be drinking all the time initially, but that was my mind. I would rather be drinking. This would be a lot easier. So there's this constant preoccupation. What we call
Mentally, you're completely consumed by that thought.
Yeah, it's like an obsession. We call it the mental obsession. The second component is loss of control. Now, loss of control means, okay, I'm going to go out in the evening and I'm going to have 2 drinks and I'm not going to have any more than that. And I can't. Maybe I can today. I have to use a lot of willpower. I have to stop at 2. But I always end up using more than I intended to. Right? Now, this happening once in a while is okay. This becomes a pattern. Right? And the third element that kicks in is what we call the consequences. Now, as a result of my preoccupation, so I'm now looking for times I want to leave work early, I want to I'm just looking for the next opportunity to drink, and then I end up drinking more. So then the consequences kick in, right? First, there'll be some embarrassment, and there'll be some, moments in which I'll act like a jackass, and then I'll start missing work, and then my relationships will start getting affected, and my health will start getting affected. And the process of denial will make me blame everything except the alcohol. So it's my wife, it's my job, it's the congestion in Bombay.
My stress.
It is my stress. It is all of that, right? Now, I'm not saying those are not contributing factors, but everybody has some degree of stress. Not everyone will develop an addiction, right? And we'll get to that in a second, because there is a biological component to this, right? So if you use the jargon that we use in psychology, addiction is a biopsychosocial condition.
Biopsychosocial condition. So my body, my mind, and my environment.
And my environment. All of these three play a causative role in the development of the addiction, and therefore in recovery, all these factors need to be addressed.
So is it rooted in one's childhood? Is it an escape? Is it people who have an addiction problem, are they escaping something?
Yes, but that's not the diagnostic feature. So let me put it this way, right? So I was talking to somebody earlier today who come from a family in which difficult childhood, right? There were 3 siblings, difficult childhood, very controlling father, very abusive father, a lot of academic pressure, bullying, etc. in school. Now, if that was causal, all 3 of them would have developed an addiction, right? Because it was the same environment, right? In my case, my brother and me grew up same household, same dad, same school, same college, same set of friends, right? I developed an addiction, he didn't. But the biology, the social environment growing up, okay, then elicits a certain way I respond to it in my head, and that's the psychological piece, right? So for instance, my brother would be able to say, dad's that way, he's got a temper and he's going to be that way, and who cares? But it would fill me with fear, right? And so I would get the sense of fear. I would constantly want his approval. I would want to think. So now I'm developing this template of fear and inadequacy, right? Now, a lot of people will go through difficult situations in their life, right? But even from that, not all of them will develop an addiction. So when my brother and me first went out drinking, he still drinks today, right? And I can't, unless somebody is willing to pay my rehab bill all over again.
So how many years have you been sober?
Me?
Yeah.
26 years.
Not a drop.
Not a drop.
So going back to the biopsychosocial, is something happening to your brain when it's addiction? When you don't have...
Yeah, thanks a lot for that question, right? Because this is the piece that most people don't get. Addiction is not a character flaw. It's not a moral weakness. It is not a sign of anything to do with your humanity. It is a medical condition. Like with every medical condition, okay, there are biological changes that happen, okay? What happens in addiction, and you're going to have to bear with me with this is going to be a little bit of a bhashan, okay? So if we zoom out, okay, and let's talk about something else that most of us understand. Let's talk about a condition like diabetes, okay? Now, there's a whole bunch of people who will eat unhealthy food, me included, right? Not all of them will develop diabetes. You may develop cholesterol issues, you may develop obesity, there may be other things. The diabetes will happen to roughly 20% of people. So what does that mean? That means that the unhealthy food per se is not causing diabetes, right? I have to have a fundamental metabolic response to the food, right? So you and me now let's say we can eat the same meal.
Okay.
Same quantity. Your sugar will go to 160, in 2 hours it'll come down to normal. I'm eating the same food, same quantity. My sugar is hitting 240 and it's taking 5 hours to come down. So what's happening here? My body now is reacting to carbs in a fundamentally different way. The impaired glucose tolerance, as we call it, right?
Yep.
Now, once that is set in, there's no reversing that. It can be managed,
Okay.
right? What happens in addiction is pretty similar. There's a whole bunch of people who use substance irresponsibly. Some of my best friends are still out there acting like they're 15 years old. Only a fraction of those will develop addiction. Again, somewhere between 15 to 18% or 15 to 20%, depending on what study you read. So what's happening here is they are having a fundamentally different biological response. And here the response is the level of dopamine that they're getting from the same quantity. Right? That means, let's say if you, me, and Ahaana, right? In the dim and distant past for me, we're 18 years old and for the first time we're going out drinking. So we go, that time we used to drink in the car.
Yes.
Yeah.
People still do.
Yeah, people still do. And let's say we order Old Monk. But now we're having the first peg. Ahaana takes the... Okay, hang on, just give me a second, I'll back up. So to understand dopamine a little bit, right? Dopamine is this neurotransmitter that is responsible for motivation and pleasure, right? So what does that mean? That means if I tell you I love having coffee, that means I'm getting, say, around 100 units of dopamine in my brain. If I say more than coffee, I enjoy so-and-so auntie's biryani. That means I'm getting 200 units of dopamine. Most of these substances, whether it's alcohol or cannabis or cocaine, will release around 300-400 units of dopamine. That's why most people like to get high in some shape, way, or form. The potential addict, right, is not getting 300-400 units. He's getting 3,000-4,000 units. Okay? These are not exact numbers. I'm just giving you a scale. Right? So going back to a story of three of us going out drinking, she has her first shot of Old Monk. She's getting only 20 units of dopamine. She's saying, what is this bloody, everybody's talking about alcohol, but chalo, everybody's drinking, I'll also drink. You're the normie. You're getting 300 units. You're saying, yeah, acha hai yaar, doston ke saath, I should do it once in a while. Wonderful. I'm drinking in that and I'm getting 3,000 units of dopamine. So first and foremost, you all have no frame of reference to understand how that's making me feel.
So just to understand dopamine, it's the happy feeling that I feel.
Pleasure, yeah.
So with a bite of chocolate,
Absolutely, same chemical.
it's the same chemical.
Look, for the good stuff and the bad stuff, if you like cycling, you're getting dopamine. If I don't like cycling, I'm not getting dopamine.
2,000 likes.
Oh my God,
Okay,
that is
that's
social. Yeah,
also dopamine.
One of the most powerful addictions today, social media.
Okay, so that dopamine in you is 3,000.
Yeah, it's disproportionate. Just like the diabetic is getting a disproportionate amount of sugar with the same food, I'm getting a disproportionate amount of dopamine with the same substance.
So you're on your own roller coaster.
I'm on my own trip, baby. It's like it's a whole new world.
So what I'm asking, is there a preemptive way of finding out, or the addict is on his own journey till he reaches the end and the zenith or the...
No, the nadir. No,
the
there is a
nadir.
way. But those are unfortunately not blood work tests. Those are clinical signs and symptoms. And we can talk about that later. What are the early warning signs?
Yeah.
That this thing, right? But to get back to this point about, because this is just the initial part. So I'm now seeking out alcohol. Right? And so generally what happens is for the first 8-10 years, if the substance is alcohol or cannabis, there's no real, we're fully functional. If you're using harder substances, you'll bottom out earlier. But what's happening at this time in the brain, right? That's the really important thing to understand. Now, my brain is not designed for this level of dopamine, right? So what my brain does is, so it's like this. Let's say a molecule of alcohol, and then it has to act on what we call dopamine receptors to produce the dopamine blast, right? Now, because the blast is too much in my brain, my brain will reduce the number of receptors.
Okay.
So what will I do? I'll increase the quantity, right? So it'll then reduce the receptors more. I will further increase the quantity, or I'll try a different substance.
So sorry, why is it reducing the receptors?
Because it's not designed for this much dopamine. It doesn't want so much dopamine. It's like, ये circuitry fry होने वाली है boss, इसको कम करो.
Got it.
Right? Now, this is what we call tolerance. This is the time in which I used to be happy with 3 drinks. Now I need 5 drinks. Now I need 6 drinks. Now I need drinks and maybe a little weed. Now I find cocaine at the end of it. Now I'm just trying to spike the dopamine, right? This is called tolerance, needing larger and larger quantities for the same effect.
Okay.
The other thing that happens, and this is really diabolical, these receptors, right, are not designed for only alcohol-related pleasure. They are designed for pleasure. So now my capacity to experience any kind of pleasure is severely diminished because my receptors are low. It's called the reward deficiency syndrome. So a lot of stuff that I used to do in the past, I used to like reading books, wo band hota hai. I used to like hanging out with my cousins, wo band hota hai. I used to like watching movies, wo band hota hai. Or I will do this only if there's alcohol, right? So you come to a period of time, over a period, this thing, in which one by one, all the other recreational activities I stopped doing. The only thing that I'm seeking out is alcohol, right? And now I come to a point, because my receptors are so low, if there is no alcohol in my system, I am constantly restless, I'm irritable, I'm bechain. The preoccupation about when I can drink next kicks in, right? And so first I'm looking forward to the weekends, then it becomes I'm looking forward to the evenings, then I'm thinking, okay, maybe I can have a beer at lunch, and then as it progresses, I want a morning drink, and it all happens so insidiously, right, that we don't notice it. And in this period of time, it's not that I'm not functional. I'm still going to my job. I still have my wife or my girlfriend. She's probably complaining about it, but I'm still doing it. My boss is also saying something here and there, but gaadi chal rahi hai.
So the birth of an addict is quite silent.
Very insidious, very masked, right? So now then, at this point, the addiction is complete. How much of it is the choice? Well, if I don't have the substance in my body now, I'm feeling bechain, right? The easiest way to understand this is cigarettes, right? A cigarette smoker will smoke maybe a cigarette every 2 hours or 3 hours. He doesn't need a reason, right? I'll tell you, I'm very stressed today, I'm smoking. Tomorrow you give me a non-stressed day also, I'm still smoking here. Barabar?
Yeah.
So my body is demanding the substance, my brain is making the story. Right? I'm drinking because of my boss, I'm drinking because of my wife, I'm drinking because of the climate, I'm drinking because of this. Yes, those are good valid reasons, but even if all of that was to be taken away, would I stop drinking?
So the brain is under attack in a sense because it's trying to balance out the receptors and the overdose and the onslaught of so much of dopamine.
Yeah.
And you end up with depression because then...
Because the inability to enjoy anything in life will manifest in some kind of depression. The bechaini will manifest in some degree of anxiety, irritability, anger, frustration. All of this you will see way before the addiction has reached the point.
And just to understand the way the brain and alcohol works, what happens to that weekend drinker who has 10 drinks and wakes up and says, I can't remember?
Yeah.
What is going on?
Blackout, right? So those are called blackouts. Yeah. What is? I don't remember any of my blackouts. Well, obviously you don't remember. It's called a blackout for a reason.
But is there something happening scientifically?
So your brain cuts off, right? So memory imprinting stops, right? There's so much alcohol that it interferes with your cognitive functions. One of the cognitive functions is memory formation, right? So I'll be operating on autopilot, So there have been times in which I would go home. I mean, I'll wake up the next morning and say, shit, man, I don't remember anything after 1 o'clock. And then I'm calling a friend, trying to figure out how my behavior was. And he'll say, yeah, boss, you were fine here. There's nothing. What's been happening there is I'm having a conversation with you. I'm operating on autopilot. It's response to stimuli. Nothing is imprinting in my brain, right? So I can go through the whole evening and come back home and have no recollection of it. And that used to scare the bejesus out of me.
But amnesia is a scary topic. Like we write it off as a hangover, as blackouts, but there's something happening to the brain where it's stopping your memory function.
Yeah, and over a period of time, it will cause damage, right?
So this is why dopamine makes a big difference to us. The addict who is now used to so much of dopamine, where does he go from here?
Yeah, so, okay, so the good news is this, right? If I stop drinking and I stop using, and this dopamine blast is not coming all the time, my brain will say, receptors ko abhi upar lao, right? So as my dopamine receptors come online, I now am able to enjoy a lot of stuff that I didn't enjoy before. And most people, right, somewhere around 3 weeks to 5 weeks, it depends from people to people, right, will experience such a sense of freshness, vitality, that you've forgotten that you could ever feel that way. Because by the time you come in to seek help, you've been using substances, either you're figuring out when you can drink, or you're recovering from the drink and then you're planning of the next drink, right? So your whole, when you come to a point in which your alcohol or whatever your substance is free of that, when these receptors come back online, you feel there's a certain sense of exhilaration and freshness that you feel. And that is when most people in recovery choose it. Choose recovery, choose sobriety. We come into recovery, unfortunately, because we have to. In 20 years of working in this field, 25 years or so, only in the movies you'll see this. One fine day a person gets up and says, I have seen the light of God, aaj se daru band. It never happens. Right? There is generally something going wrong in my life in one of three areas, either in my health, in my work, or in my relationships, in which I've realized that if I don't do something now about my drinking or whatever I'm using, there's going to be major hell here. So we come into recovery because we have to stop.
So usually, I mean, out of your experience, does the person come or his family brings him or his best friend?
It's the family most of the time. Most of the time, at least in India. In the US, it was different. When I was working there, it's very different. There's a whole cultural dimension to this also. But 80% of the time, it will be the family members who will bring the person in.
And what does treatment look like for an addict and suffering from alcohol addiction?
Okay, so this is another thing that these are really good questions here. So, what recovery requires is more than a once a week counseling session is not going to make a dent in the problem, right? What you require is a program of recovery which has a combination of individual sessions, group sessions, and in India, family support sessions, coupled with medication for some people, not necessarily, but we always do a psych evaluation because quite often there's some depression, anxiety that's floating around with it, right? You require these four elements together, right? And when you have this, you put these elements together and you build a comprehensive treatment plan that addresses all the bio, psycho, social life domains. Recovery is not only about stopping drinking. That's the first step. It's about rebuilding your life.
So how does the medication work?
So the medication, so there are medications that will help you manage the withdrawal, right? So there are certain people now depending, so addiction like any other condition is mild, moderate, severe, right? If it is severe, and if you, let's say you're a person who's been using every day from morning to night, then stopping on your own is close to impossible. So there is a medical procedure called a detoxification, which is a hospital procedure, in which they give you fluids, electrolytes, and they give you some kind of medication to help you manage the withdrawal. Thankfully, only a minority of people need that. The most common symptoms that people will experience is irritability, insomnia, agitation. For that, there is a class of medication that can help for a short period of time. If there's a long-standing history of depression or bipolar disorder along with that, that has to be treated simultaneously. So that's the medication piece of it. But I just want to be clear, there is no medication that is a treatment for addiction, right? These will treat the supporting things that arise out of addiction.
I read somewhere that you have opioid blockers.
So there are two types of, there's naltrexone and there's acamprosate, okay? These are medications that help you reduce the cravings.
Okay.
Right? So that becomes a part of the treatment program. So that's the medication piece of it. The counseling piece, right? So there are three critical ingredients. If these three things come together, no matter how severe your addiction is, you can and you will get sober, right? One is you got to have the determination, right? You got to want it, right? That you have to bring to the table. I mean, right? But willpower, determination is necessary, critical, but not sufficient, right? What is necessary is strategy, right? And strategy means what? That just because I've decided to stop, forget alcohol here. Right? This concept of relapse, right? That keeps coming up with addiction, right? You need a strategy because your brain is going to try to tell you, "Abhi theek hai, yaar, 2 peg mein kuch nahi hone wala hai," or something other. So you need a strategy. Those moments are going to come. You're going to have to figure out how to navigate that. That's what your individual counselor will help you do.
So we have a live example. Aditya, what was your recovery like? Do you remember?
That's a good question. So, it was extremely hard at first, right? You get so accustomed to a lifestyle, especially living in a city like Bombay, everything is about going out, socializing, and alcohol becomes such an integral part of your life. So when you are on the path to recovery, the first thing that you do is you have to be social without alcohol, and that is extremely tough. And for someone like me, I mean, I am an incredibly social person, which is completely the opposite of Doc, but I like to go out. And it was an extremely hard journey to get back into socializing without alcohol, right? Because every setting it is the most socially acceptable sort of norm. You go to a party, where's your drink? Why aren't you drinking? The 20 questions about it. And when you're just about getting sober, you don't want to be announcing to the whole world that, okay, I've given up drinking, I have a problem with alcohol, and I'm not going to drink. And this is an extremely sort of hard space to navigate. So, what I had to do for the first 6 months is I had to sort of withdraw a little bit from my social life. And you know what? It's hard, but if you take, I had to miss like best friends' birthdays, I had to miss a lot of events. But once you start getting into the zone of going there and being present, I actually have found that there are not as many people drinking in this world as I thought. I only gravitated towards the people who are drinking. There are enough and more people out there who I was now able to have conversations with. Yes, it was hard. Yes, I did it one step at a time. First 20 minutes and then I used to leave. Then after that I got to an hour. Then maybe till 11 o'clock. I mean, it's not that I haven't been out till late, but I pick and choose. And what's incredible to me today is that I can get up at 6 in the morning without a hangover and just look around and smile.
Yeah, and now you're extremely comfortable, right? Now he'll go to parties till 4 o'clock in the morning when people are drinking their heads off, and he's sitting there and smiling, and people are looking at him like, "What happened here?"
So how many years do you have in counting?
Well, about 9 years now.
9 years. And if I take you back a little, back 9 years and to your treatment, how did your treatment?
So I came in the usual way, kicking and screaming.
So you walked in.
Well, you know what? There were a lot of, I would like to say, circumstances around a home. And, I was at this phase of my life where I didn't like the person I had become. And I wanted to do something about it, but I just, for the life of me, did not know enough. I did not know what I needed to do. I did not know how to do it. And I don't think there was awareness, right, about nobody in my family or friend circle even knew of where to go, what to do. I went to about 6 different psychologists, and not one of them suggested that I had a problem with alcohol. Not one.
That's,
right?
yeah.
Which was, when I go back and think about it, blew my mind. And then, I think it got to a point where I was evaluating different treatment options. And, by chance, I walked into Azhar's office, and I was like, within 10 minutes, I knew I'd reached a place where someone understood me. Right? So I tried various different models in my life: controlled drinking, drinking only on vacation, drinking only out of the country. I tried all these different models, right? And
No hard drinks, only wine.
yeah, all of this, like only a couple of beers, I did all of this stuff, and eventually it took me down only to one place, right? It took me down to a path where I didn't want to be.
Okay.
And about 2017, I think July 16th was the last time I ever had a drink, and it's been a wonderful journey from then.
So every time you chose a variation of not drinking or drinking less, you came back to where you started. You mean the problem never went away?
Not at all. Not for me, at least.
So there's this thing that I read which says dry January has now become high January. Because people don't drink, but then they do other substances.
Yeah.
So is that what is the addict?
Yeah.
What is the addict trying to do here? Is he substituting?
Yeah. So there's something called cross addiction, right? So remember, what we're chasing is the dopamine. We may have a substance of choice, but it's a substance of choice. If we are denied that, we will find something else, right? So what happens is, so now weed is the new normal, right? And there are a whole bunch of other wonderful
Gummies.
substances on
Gummies and
gummies and all. So
What
people
do you think about that? Weed being legalized so across
Yeah,
countries,
that's it.
across states?
So that's a really contentious topic, right? So I'll be honest about this. 15 years ago, I really was a big proponent of weed being legalized because there was enough science to show that weed causes less damage than the other. Because alcohol, we've so far just talked about addiction. If you leave the addiction, the health consequences from alcohol, just per se, right? Even if you don't develop an addiction, the liver, the pancreas, cancer risk, and all is extremely high. Less so, we thought, about marijuana, and then they started legalizing marijuana all over the world. What happened as a result of that, right, is it has now become an industry, right? It's a commercial business. So in the days that I was growing up, if you're smoking hash or weed, the THC is the active ingredient in weed, the molecule that gets you high, right? It should be 3 or 4% in naturally occurring weed. Ever since it became a commercial industry, they are engineering these strains. So there's nothing less than 30-40%. And weed has never existed in the history of humanity in this form, right? So we have so what it does is it causes addiction like this. So kids are going from their first hit to waking and baking, which is in an extremely short period of time, right? Because it's extremely potent. And if you do the gummies and the edibles, they're like 70-80% THC, yeah? Right? And this is the adolescent brain, which is not developed yet, right? So we are seeing the amount I'm seeing in my practice right now about just weed addiction. And so people will tell me weed is natural. But poison ivy is natural here. Just because something is natural doesn't mean you can't have weed is natural. Achha, right? And it's being legalized all over the world. Yeah, and we got to question that because they legalized it without regulations, right? Once you make anything an industry, there's a profit motive, and then you're going to engineer stronger and more exotic strains, and then you'll market them like they're the most exotic things in the world. So what we're understanding now, okay, what we are seeing is there are 3 things that weed causes that are it causes addiction. There is no question about it. The same preoccupation, the loss of control, and the consequences, right? It causes something called the amotivational syndrome, right? And what it does is it takes away all your motivation, ambition, and drive, right? So you see these really smart, switched-on kids who are really very doing well in school and extracurricular, and you find weed, and then you want to just chill, right? Weed will give you that mellow. So a lot of the ambition and the drive is being taken off, and you see a decline in the performance of these kids. So you have addiction, you have the amotivational syndrome, and the scariest thing you're seeing now in weed is psychosis, right? Now, psychosis is something that we would associate only with the heavy drugs. But like we said, weed has never existed in this form.
What is psychosis? Sorry.
Okay, now psychosis is this really scary condition, right? Psychosis is not a condition of its own, it's a symptom. The commonest place you see psychosis is in conditions like schizophrenia. So what is psychosis if you break it down, right? We have 5 senses on the basis of which we interpret reality, right? In psychosis, we have something called impaired reality testing. That means I'm not determining what is real or what is not real on the 5 senses. It's just being formulated by my thoughts. So if I think something, I can believe that's true, right? So for those people who smoke weed, right, they know sometimes they have what they call sometimes a BT, a bad trip. Psychosis is a permanent bad trip, right? There's a lot of paranoia, there's a lot of agitation, there's delusions, and you really start, you in the traditional sense, you say he's flipped out, no?
Yeah.
So you're seeing that a lot with weed, which is shocking, right? And now because the studies are just coming out now because it's just been legalized, so you need to have 5-7 years of data, and it's really scary. It's really scary, and it's very, very prevalent. And in India, it's dirt cheap.
So it's not as if alcohol addiction is bad enough. The cross addiction is another danger in itself.
And we'll substitute. Now, see, the cross addiction means what? So I see this so often here. Alcohol was my problem. I've realized alcohol is a problem. I can't drink safely. I'm going to stop. But I'll switch to weed. Right? Now, one of 2 things will happen. Either weed will make you desire the real thing, which in your case is alcohol. It will take you back to alcohol. Or weed will become your drug of choice. Because remember, at the biological level, you're getting that much of a dopamine blast. right? Whether it's weed or alcohol or whatever your substance is, right? So my true story with me, right? Uh, I talked a little bit about the behavioral addictions.
Yes.
So in the year, I think it was 2000, 2001, I went to US to get my master's. All gung-ho, I'm sober now, I'm going to become a therapist and I'm going to save the world kind of a thing. So India that time was on dial-up, right? Remember dial-up internet? I went to US and I went to broadband internet. Now here I'm going to the master's, paying an arm and leg to study psychology, right? And I discover a game called the World of Warcraft. I see a lot of people. And instead of here I have gone spent all this money. I should be and I had classes in the morning. People are out there making friends. I want to come back home in the evening and I want to play World of Warcraft. And I'm playing it not 1 hour or 2 hours. I'm playing it for six hours. Right? It's a dopamine. Right? And so I had to quit gaming.
So that was your cross addiction.
Yeah.
So you can have, well, not healthy in that case, but you can have a healthy substitution.
Yeah, and that's what we help people find in recovery, right? So there are exercises, there are various other forms that will give you a good release of dopamine, which are not unhealthy.
So if someone has an alcohol addiction problem, seeks treatment, gets recovery, and he substitutes it with maybe playing sports?
Yeah, works very well. For the people who are sports inclined, here's a story here. He would not have been sober if he didn't like sports.
Yeah. So I think one of the things that
No way he would have made it.
yeah.
His wife wasn't very happy, but
So I think one of the things for me which really kept me. So I used to play a lot of sport way before, and addiction really came in the way of all of that. And one of the first things when I got sober was I really jumped back into sport, right?
you won the nationals, right?
Yes. So I am a national level squash player. So first year out of addiction, I won nationals for the first time, and I really got back into it with a bang. Now, here's the danger, right? I mean, as you grow older, is we switch to getting dopamine from sport. Now, while it's really great, there is a danger of overdoing it. Now, while it may appear to be completely healthy at 36, I decided to play twice a day, and I busted my knee and I had to take a year off. But the point is that there was something for me to look forward to, right? Every morning waking up or every evening playing sport. And sport for me was a great community. I've always had a great community with sport, and you've seen it firsthand, that there are a lot of people there and everyone is motivated by the same thing. So that sort of community, showing up with a bunch of people, getting behind something, of course, feeling good, dopamine, all of that comes in. But that's really something that has helped my recovery tremendously. And it's whether it's squash, skiing, diving, golf, paddle, you name it, I'm there.
I can connect with that because we have a friend who had, in his 50s, he had a stroke, but he came out of it very quickly and in time. And he is addicted to dopamine through squash. Within the doctor saying you're okay to do something, he was not only playing high-level squash, but also working out 2 hours a day with such ferocity that it only meant that there is an addiction to dopamine through sports. So coming back to alcohol addiction, when somebody with that level of dopamine need or addiction stops his alcohol and goes into withdrawal, what is happening to his body when he's withdrawing from?
So primarily it affects the nervous system, right? The nervous system really basically goes into shock. That's why you see the tremors, you see the agitation. But unless there are chronic alcoholic conditions in which it can cause something called delirium tremens, which is a life-threatening condition. Again, fortunately, very rare. But the nervous, we call it, the nervous system becomes dysregulated, right? It's almost like your whole body goes into a fight or flight response, right? So you're constantly, your sympathetic nervous system is overactive, you're very aroused. So the heart rate, the palpitations, the sweatiness, the tremulousness, all of that is part and parcel of withdrawal. That is time limited. right? There is a way in which we help people make that easier, but there is no way around it. The way is through it, right? But it can be managed to a point in which it doesn't distress you. So the more busy you keep. So in early recovery, waking up with I don't know what to do with myself is the worst place to be. You need routine. You need structure. Purpose, right? So we call them the 4 ACEs. You need A for activities, C for company, the people that you can hang out with who you're not going to get tempted to use with, E, exercise, and S for some spiritual practice. We at Mindset here, we're really big believers in a spiritual component. There has to be something in life that is more important than just my needs, right? So these 4 elements will really help you through. Well, I was talking a little earlier about the 3 essentials, right?
Yes.
The willpower that is critical, the strategy. The third is community, right? So as human beings, we are hardwired for social connection. We are not designed to live in isolation. The problem is when you come into recovery, the only community you got left is your using buddies, right? So I used to think I don't know anybody who doesn't drink. Not true. I had stopped hanging out with the people who don't drink because I thought they were not cool. I had self-selected into a bunch of people who enjoyed doing the same thing, so it masked my drinking. Community is the most important thing because no matter how much you're doing if you're doing individual, group and family sessions, life happens between sessions, right?
Yeah.
So we can teach you a couple of tools about how to surf the craving, how to this thing, but the community, and what I mean by community, what we believe very strongly here at Mindset is a community of people who've been there, who've gone through the addiction and have come out the other side.
And is this the space that you're developing as a community?
Absolutely. It's a very community-driven program. So anybody who comes in here, I've been working in this field for the last 15 years in India, right? So there's a bunch of people who have helped along the way. And so I can mobilize a whole bunch of community, right? If you come in at 18 years old, you come into 50 years old, I can connect you to someone who's had that experience. And you can build an ecosystem with people who have learned to enjoy life, right, without the substance.
But talking about community and the social setting, we live in a society that's charged with everything going towards the bar. I was at a party with a cousin who had spent 6 months in rehab. And this was outside Maharashtra in another state. And he comes back, and after 6 months, he couldn't remember that his second son's name that was born during his dark months and things like that. And he said he was in full recovery, and he sits down and we look around at this big party, and of course there are people at the bar. And he says to me that, Priyali, you'd be shocked how many people in this room actually have addiction problems who should be in treatment but are going camouflaged. Can you help me understand? I know, and I could spot those people out, but for someone who can't, what is he talking about?
What are the early warning signs? So it depends on what age group you're talking about, right? If you're talking about a young adult, right, you can see behavior changes, right? They get more irritable, they get more rebellious, they spend much more time with their friends, the academic grades slide, you see all those common things. If you're in your middle cohort, right, what you'll notice specifically around the drinking, okay, is there is this thing of pre-drinking that starts. That before you're going to an event which anyway there's going to be booze, you want a couple of drinks before you go in there.
Pre-gaming.
Yeah.
Right? So that becomes now, when you're doing it when you're 23 or 24, it's a rite of passage.
I'm so sorry, but pre-gaming is also camouflage. You're covering up what you're actually doing.
So, pre-gaming at some point was, I think, when you're young and in colleges because you can't afford to drink out at night.
That's normative at that age. If you're doing it at 35, you need to think about that, right?
And if you're doing it at 45?
You seriously need to think about that.
Ahaana, you...
So I feel like there's another component to this. Along with addiction, along with the disease of addiction, there is also co-occurring disorders like anxiety. So a lot of times the drug or the alcohol is just the symptom. The actual addiction is the dis-ease, the discomfort that people are feeling, whether it's anxiety, whether it's depression, and different things that come in there. But the fact that people pre-game says a lot about the anxious feeling that they're getting to be in a setting around people. People could have generalized anxiety disorder or various things like that. So they need to have some sort of intoxication going, some sort of substance going for them to even reach a place and enjoy that party.
So
And
before they
continue.
enter that social setting, they need to brace themselves with that sensory overload of dopamine through alcohol.
Yeah, because at the core of addiction, right, like Azhar says, and like I've grown up to believe in these last 7 years, is a lot of inadequacy. It's that low self-esteem which stays there, right? And people don't know how to mask it without alcohol. And that's why alcohol becomes something that you can cope with. So initially it'll help you. It'll help you cope until it does the opposite of that.
It's very interesting.
Yeah. So you'll see people who pre-drink, you'll see people who, how quickly they're drinking, how much they're drinking. You'll see the behaviors, right? Which they'll be slurring, they'll be staggering. You'll see all of this, and people will laugh it out. But those are very, very clear. Now, ekadi bar hua to sab, that's fine. But if you see this happening with the regularity, right, that's a problem. In the non-drinking episode, the person is going later to work. Mondays are becoming an issue, or you're leaving work early, or this person has now become very insistent that 6 baje ke I need the drink, that there's a particular time in which I have to have the drink. Right?
So these are signs that I can watch out for.
Yeah.
That will tell me that maybe
There's
is a problem.
And also behavior change. You'll see a lot more anger, a lot more irritation. There'll be a lot more disputes at home. You'll see a lot of agitation around this person that seems to be only resolved by when he settles down, when he has a drink. You will also see sometimes the opposite, that once he drinks, you'll see a very ugly side emerging. It's like this Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of a thing, right? These are all, so this is not normal.
Could it also be that after the drink, a very happy side and a very amiable side emerges?
Absolutely.
And both point to the same, both the arrows are pointing in the same direction?
It's a personality change, right? So whether you're going from silent to amiable, or whether you're going from amiable to hostile, right? The alcohol is changing your personality and your behavior.
So when we use this term very loosely, I have an addictive personality. But there is truth to that. There are personalities that are naturally addictive.
So not personality, it's not exactly a personality, something very different, but it is a person who has a certain dopamine response to certain substances, right? So yes, I will abuse anything that gives me dopamine, right? So it can be sugar, it can be anything, right? But the addictive personality, so when we talk of personality in psychology, that's a very different lingo. What there is in a person who develops an addiction is a certain neurochemistry and neurobiology, right? And so therefore, they will misuse substances, processes, almost anything that we do enjoy, we will overdo.
So going back to the camouflage setting and people going under the radar, if you had to give me 5 signs that someone can look out for to see.
Okay. So, and this I'm saying not as a one-off incident, right? In a one-off incident, it can happen. But if you're seeing this as a pattern, right?
Recurring.
That you're seeing a person drinking very fast. They're gulping their drinks, right? B, you're seeing a lot of slurring and staggering, right? You were noticing that the weekend drinking is turning into almost binging. It's like most of us who don't have a problem with alcohol after a heavy night in the morning don't want to think about alcohol.
Yes.
But there is this person who likes to have a little beer in the morning to make him feel
Hair
settled.
of the dog.
Hair of the dog, right?
Okay.
Right? Frequency of blackouts. If a person is unable to remember on a regular basis.
Or reaching out for painkillers in the morning.
Reaching out for painkillers in the morning.
Okay.
Right? These are all signs that, okay, this is not normal. There's something problematic that's going on in here.
So this should raise the flag for somebody who has someone like this in their,
Absolutely.
like near and dear ones.
Yeah.
Or
And the commonest thing is, if you are the person, right? If enough people who know you are concerned about you, there probably is a problem.
yeah.
Right?
But so many of us just keep quiet and maybe cheers and let the night end as it is.
Yeah.
Very few people take that action.
Yeah.
Are you seeing that change in our society where...
Ever so gradually, but yes. Yeah. A lot of times now, it's not only family members. A friend will come and say, look, I'm really concerned about my friend. I don't even know how to bring it up with her. because she's going to get embarrassed. I don't want to put her in an awkward situation. How do I have this conversation?
And the reason why these people continue to do it, even though they know it's harming them, is because that dopamine needs to continue being released in their body physically. So we can't treat them as if they've done something bad. We have to treat them like, say, you treat a patient of, like, say, cancer or diabetes, where...
Absolutely, right? So, two important things, right? Even though the person will take a lot of time to acknowledge that this is bad for me. So we have defense mechanisms, right? Denial is one of those. So I will be able to tell myself, so there's one called minimization. That is, I should look at it, but it's not so bad. The second is rationalization. Yes, I know I'm drinking a lot, but it's because of this.
Displacement.
Right? Then there's denial. This is not a problem. Everybody drinks like this. Right? So first we have a complex set of defense mechanisms to, in our head, normalize our drinking or our using. Right? When that gives way, so up till then, I'm still telling myself, I'm choosing to do this. If you had a boss like mine and if you had a wife like mine, even you would be drinking like this.
I don't have a problem.
Yeah, I don't have a problem. Right? What are the 5 stages? Like, I don't have a problem, you guys are all idiots. Right? Second is, हाँ यार थोड़ा problem है, but कम करना चाहिए. I don't need to stop. Then the third is, हाँ यार maybe I need to stop for a little period of time, but I don't need anybody's help. Right? And then you say, हाँ boss, maybe I need a little help, but I'm not going to listen to everything these bloody doctors and counselors tell me. Right? And then finally you come to the point that say, क्या करने का है boss?
Help me.
Yeah. And most of us will cycle through this.
But this is a good time to discuss the health impacts of what alcohol is doing to any person who's having over his average safe limit, which is, I don't know, which is what?
Nobody's going to believe this, right? People are going to look at it. So the safe limit, according to the World Health Organization, is no more than 7 drinks a week. 30 ml drinks.
So if I put 30 ml in that, and if I drink 2 or 3 times a week, I've crossed it.
You've crossed it. Right? So, okay. So in medicine, what do we do? Right? We look at risk profile. We look at things that contribute to risk. Right? And the more risk factors you have, the more likely you are to develop a certain condition. So, I think Australia recently came out and said that there is no safe level of alcohol. Right? See, as we're understanding now, there's a link now between alcohol and cancer. Like regular small amounts of alcohol can be carcinogenic. This came out, I think, 2 or 3 years ago.
So any amount of alcohol will increase my chances of cancer.
So it will increase your chances of... So let's put it this way, right? So what are the common culprits? Liver. Right? The liver is the only organ that metabolizes the alcohol. If you're putting in alcohol to a larger extent, you're putting more load on the liver. And then you get what we call the liver enlarges to deal with that, and you have fatty liver, right? And if you continue drinking, you can get cirrhosis. Cirrhosis can be life-threatening. You can do a liver transplant. You can have pancreatic conditions. Pancreatitis is a horribly painful condition in which right? You can have a whole host of gastrointestinal problems, right? From ulcers down to the whole GI cavity. You can have a whole bunch of neurological complications from memory and agitation, memory, tremulousness. You'll get the shakes. It can cause neuropathies. It can cause. So all of this has been documented for 50 years, and there have been safe drinking guidelines.
And the heart?
Yes, it can affect the heart also.
I read there's something called a holiday heart, where these people go, they drink, they get a holiday heart, which is basically overdose of alcohol affects directly on your heart, cardiac function.
So there's a whole, the dangers about alcohol have been well documented, right? That's not new. We just choose to ignore them.
Turn a blind eye.
See, there's something called normalization, right? What you see around you, you accept as normal.
So what is the biggest misconception that people have about addiction?
That's a really good question.
Quantity.
Or is it stigma? Is it social stigma?
Yeah. So
that moral failing. Right?
Yeah, they look at, so there are 2 or 3 dimensions to that, right? Say, no?
Moral failing.
Yeah, that's what people
Can you
look at
explain what is moral failing?
It's just looked down upon. It's not looked like, as we discussed, how addiction is similar to diabetes and someone having cancer and like a disease. Nobody looks at it like that. They look at it like a moral failing, that this person is bad.
Yeah,
There's
this
something
person's
wrong with
wrong.
this person and he's just doing it, intentionally.
That
They
he's a
don't know that
horrible
they
person.
don't know about control.
So, how should one look at a person battling with severe addiction, alcohol addiction? How should we look at them?
You have to understand that you have to look at them the same way you would look at someone who has diabetes. You literally have to look at it like that. A lot of family members have to reach a point of compassion to help the person get into recovery. Otherwise, if you're going to try to get angry with them, scold them into it, people try to do so many things to addicts who are not yet in recovery to punish them. None of that works. There are even rehabs where people till date treat addicts really badly.
Rehabs
Yes.
Yeah.
that treat
That's
people
sad.
badly.
Yes,
But
they
isn't
tie
that
them
the
up.
opposite reason why rehabs are created?
But there are different types of rehabs.
What,
Yeah.
what is your take on rehabs?
So what's it? Before we jump into
Yeah,
rehabs,
yeah.
on this topic,
Yeah.
right? I think it's really important to note that I didn't choose to have this condition, right? It's not something I did, which made me more susceptible to being addicted to alcohol or not. And let me tell you, it's extremely difficult to watch everyone over there sit and have 2 drinks and be normal and say that why can't I? I mean, it is extremely hard. On days you feel like, why did this happen to me? At the end of the day, it's like maybe having a heart condition or maybe having diabetes, right? I mean, you question why me? And it is, I think, one of the big misconceptions, at least to my mind, is like, I didn't choose this. I didn't choose to go out and become an alcoholic or an addict or whatever it is. And that's what most people don't realize. It's not a choice. I think that is the one thing that people have a massive misconception about, that you chose this, you should have willpower, you can stop at 2 drinks, I can do it, why can't you?
There is that anger and intolerance towards a drunk,
Yeah.
a perpetual drunk, or somebody who's constantly got alcohol in his system.
And there is what Ahaana is saying is very true, right? What is needed most is compassion. If you understand this is a medical condition and there's a cause of treatment, and nobody chooses to have diabetes, and nobody chooses to develop arthritis, and nobody chooses to develop addictions, these things happen. What makes it difficult, right, for family members, and which is that's why the family counseling is an integral part of the recovery process, because your family can be your strongest asset in your recovery, but also can be a great liability if they don't get it. So think about it, right? If somebody has diabetes, now your compassion towards this person would be proportionate to how committed this person is to his recovery, right? So when my uncle developed diabetes, good old Muslim man, 75 years old, doesn't drink, doesn't smoke, loves his khana. Now, you have to give up all that khana. So he would try to cheat. So then you're asking my aunt to have compassion. Now, if he was compliant with his treatment,
Yeah.
right, then it's easier to have compassion, right? You take most diabetics, right? We go to the doctor, पूरा nice food plan बनाएंगे,
Sure.
ईमानदारी से, right?
Yeah.
And then we will start cheating, and then our spouses will get mad,
Yes.
right? It's the same thing that happens with addiction. We will say we want to stop, we will desire to stop, and then we will cheat here and we will cheat there, and that will be seen as a big betrayal. This is a great segue into this topic of relapse, if you don't mind for a few seconds, right?
I'd love to hear.
So everybody talks about addiction like relapse both hota hai, right? Now, relapse is a phenomena you see with whenever you're trying to change any long-standing behavior, right? Whatever the behavior may be, you will come across relapse. The commonest place we see relapse is not in addiction, is in dieting,
In food.
in food. So I will make a full-on food plan. And imandari say I need to lose 10 kilos.
Okay.
Nobody's putting a gun to my head. I will go to a nutritionist. I will make a full food plan. Right? 1 week later, I'm having a little pizza. I'm having a little ice cream. That is a relapse.
short-term recovery and relapse.
Yeah, the relapse means there is a process in my head that is started that is just allowing me to say, "एक pizza में कुछ नहीं होने वाला है," right? Addiction में the same thing happens. Even if I have decided to stay closer, my brain will genuinely tell me, "थोड़ा चलेगा," right? Now, when we look at a person who's cheated on their diet, because we see it so often, we don't say it's a relapse. We say, "ये होता है, चलो, he'll get back on it." If an alcoholic in recovery drinks after 1 week, तो दुनिया खत्म हो गई.
If he's off the bandwagon, he's...
So, but they don't understand that recovery is a process. Before you get onto your food plan, when the first time when you say, okay, I'm going to do something about my weight or my this thing and all, you'll have a couple of iterations of that food plan till you get a system that works for you, that you can then commit to and works for you, right? So relapse is not only unique. So anytime you're so relapse is part of the process, right? The thing to understand is that it's a learning curve, right? I always say there's nobody who's learned to ride a bicycle without falling down 7 or 8 times.
So you're saying a person dealing with alcohol addiction should already prepare himself for a few bad relapses, maybe?
Yeah, no.
And that doesn't mean he can't recover?
Yeah, so the thing is this, okay, that's a damn good question. Yeah, so lapses may happen, right? So there's a technical difference between a lapse and a relapse. So that means what, if I'm on a diet and Saturday night I go out and I eat pizza, but Sunday I'm back on my diet, right? That's a lapse. If from Sunday I say, no, hell to this diet, I'm eating pizza every day, that's a relapse.
Okay.
Right? So the lapses that, okay, I had no intention of drinking, but ek raat mein I went out and I drank and happened, but tomorrow I'm back on the program, I'm back on my recovery, no problem.
Okay.
Right? We'll figure out, then in counseling, we figure out, okay, what happened? You had full intention not to drink. We can dissect that whole incident and learn from it.
A lapse is a temporary slip. Yeah. A relapse is when you've given up.
Yeah, is a return to, this is not going to happen, I'm going back to whatever. Right? So, do we give permission to relapse? Absolutely not. Do we understand that it happens? Absolutely. Do we punish it? Absolutely not.
So you've taken the shame away from it and that moral stigma that goes with it.
Yeah.
We have to treat it like a medical condition.
Because it is, no, fairly, it is a medical condition. There's no treating as if it is a medical condition.
It is a medical condition.
We've known this from 1954. When the American Medical Association came up and diagnosed it as a condition, we've known this.
And even when an addict who wants to get into recovery comes and hears this for the first time, they feel a sense of relief to understand that, okay, there is not something wrong with me. Like I'm not doing this intentionally. When they understand that this is also a disease like any other disease, there is a sense of relief, and that helps them to even start getting into recovery or even wanting to follow the steps of recovery.
And is there a guideline which says short-term recovery is X years, long-term recovery is X years, and then the brain permanently heals?
Yeah, oh yeah, that's neuroplasticity, right?
Can you shed some light on
so neuroplasticity is real. We know this for sure. The
neuroplasticity?
Yeah, is the brain's ability to rewire itself, right? Whatever is inflicting the damage on the brain, right? Whether it's a toxin like alcohol at this point or whether it's stress and cortisol, right? So all these conditions will create changes in the brain, right? If you remove those stressors, right, the brain can absolutely rewire itself. The neurotransmitters, the structures, the neurons, you can all build those reconnections all over again. The healing can be 100%, unless in a few unfortunate cases, the permanent damage has been done.
But is this a sure fact? That
100%, without a shadow of a doubt.
So a person getting 3,000 units of dopamine from a glass of alcohol, once he goes through this neuroplasticity transformation, will no longer get the 3,000?
No, he will. He cannot go back to drinking.
Is that why none of you have a drink?
Yeah.
None of you will ever have a drink?
None of us, I hope not. So it's not because I dislike alcohol.
Okay.
I just know what it does to me.
So how does the neuroplasticity work if I cannot go back and have my one drink?
So the neuroplasticity, see, it's like this, right? With diabetes, there's no way, once I'm a diabetic, I can't eat that much chawal and not get a sugar spike.
Yeah.
That wiring is gone. But the healing that happens in the other functions of the brain, it's like that proverbial, that biblical Garden of Eden story, no? That once you're in recovery, you have everything that a man could desire or a woman can desire. God is saying, don't have the apple.
Okay.
Now, tum puch rahe ho, why I can't have the apple? So khao yaar baba apple. Right? You got everything else.
So what is the time frame then for this neuroplasticity, and what's the process of someone achieving
So that's very variable, man. So what we say is that, so if you're talking about the brain rewiring itself to getting this thing, so you can see that in 3 months or 6 months also, right? That people, the whole online functions come back, but it depends on the amount of damage that is accrued, no? So depending on any medical condition, if the damage has been severe,
Yeah.
it takes a little longer to recover, but recovery 100% is doable.
So if someone thinks they have a problem, what should they do? What's the first step?
Ask for help.
And where would help be out? There is mindset, of course, but
Yeah.
what's your first? Is it the therapist? Is it a doctor?
It's a therapist.
And we spoke about the 5 signs someone can look out for in their near and dear ones. What are 5 signs that a person can look out in themselves, that they can self-check? Is it the same?
I think missed commitments is one. That's a big one, right? Failing commitments to yourself, right? Setting intentions to go out and have 2 drinks and come home 6 hours later. You don't know how, don't know when. So I think failed commitments to yourself is definitely one. Failed commitments to others. Just not knowing why you're doing what you're doing. I think that's a big one. People don't understand it, right? Nobody wants to go out and come home absolutely blacked out, right? With no idea how to come home. I mean, how they've come home or what's gone on in the night. But if you see this behavior repeatedly in yourself, look, there is hope, and there are people who can help, and I think the biggest thing for people like that is to reach out to a judgment-free environment. And we provide one, but there are a lot of other people out there who are providing some amount of safe spaces, right? I'm not saying that we're the only people in the whole world doing this, but definitely one of the few outpatient programs in Bombay. But yeah, so reach out.
You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I wanted to add isolating to that. When you start isolating,
What does that mean?
that means,
Drinking alone,
okay, you're someone who's maybe the life of the party, or maybe the fire starter and all of that. And then now you're just like slowly trying to isolate. You're not going out as much, but you're still going to continue using at home.
Okay.
And also when you stop telling people how much you're doing, right? You may be doing what you're doing or how much you have. You're not going to share. You're not
hiding
gonna-
your quantities of
hiding your
consumption.
That's a good.
Yeah,
you're
that's actually very
isolating,
true. Yes.
All of those
You
things.
go from boasting to how much you could drink to hiding how much you're actually drinking.
And then that's when the flag again
So
has
there
to
is
be
an
raised.
acronym. There's actually a medical screener. They call it the CAGE test. CAGE.
Okay.
And you have to ask yourself this. C is, have you ever tried to cut down?
Okay.
Right? Because only a person who has a problem will consider cutting down. No?
So should we do it live with me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever tried to cut down?
Every day.
Okay. Do you get A is for anger. Do you get angry when people talk about your drinking?
Sometimes.
Okay. G is for guilt. Have you ever felt guilty about your drinking?
All the time.
And E, have you ever had the need for an eye opener in the morning, the hair of the dog?
No.
No.
So
So you're golden.
No, you're not golden. If you say if you've got
what is
even
it?
one of this,
yes.
you should seek a consultation about you need to address your drinking. Because if you've tried to cut down this, if you're sensitive about people talking about your drinking, if you're feeling guilty about it,
Yes.
right, then there is an issue somewhere. Now, this may not be a full-blown addiction, but it is something that needs to be addressed.
It needs. That's big. So
So this is one of the earliest screens that came out with this 30 years ago. The CAGE question. It is online everywhere.
it's cage. I'm going to add that in my link of resources
Yeah.
for people to check on
Yeah,
themselves.
yeah.
But as a life coach and as part of the addiction program, where does that come in? What's the role of a life coach in therapy and treatment?
So it's quite mixed actually. Once people are on the path of recovery, a lot of people have destroyed lives. They don't know what to do next, right? People they've lost the unlucky ones have lost their jobs, they've broken relationships, they don't know where to start to rebuild, right? So a lot of the work I do with people is how do I how to rebuild, right? I mean, I also don't only do work with people in addiction. I also work with a lot of people outside of addiction, and because it's not only people with addiction who struggle or need a place to talk to. So a lot of my work is done with people who just outside of the addiction field, but in the addiction field, the work I do is more about people who need to rebuild, what they're going to do next, how they're going to go about it, make plans to sort of get back and reintegrate into whatever they feel that they would like to achieve.
And you, Ahana, where does your role as a counselor come in? It's different from a life coach, I'm guessing.
Yeah, it is different from a life coach. So when I was talking about, the inadequacy that people feel, and it often comes from something from childhood, right? Some incident, a traumatic experience, whether there's been sexual abuse, whether there's been emotional abuse. And a lot of people will not get addicted to a drug just because of that. But then there are a minority of people who will. That said, there are bags that people carry. I like to always say this, that every year from a certain, I think maybe 10, 12, whatever they can remember, or maybe even younger, they carry bags. Like this is basically baggage, right, of things that they have gone through. Whether it's a simple thing as a mother comparing the child to another child, or the teacher making the kid stand up in school and insulting the kid about not knowing your tables, different things like that. And these are much earlier on. It can grow into many different things, and the child keeps collecting bags. There's one backpack, two backpack, the three. There's so many backpacks that they come in with, and that's why at some point the drugs and alcohol did help, because they used it when they were experimenting. Okay, when they were experimenting, like everybody does in that age and all of that, they experience it and they tend to enjoy it, like a little bit more, like how Azhar mentioned about the dopamine, right? But what the emotional part of this is the baggage that they are not processing. And that is what keeps them going back to the drug, because they know that, okay, this is too much for me to feel. As addicts, our biggest problem is that we feel a lot and that we don't want to feel at all. And because we don't want to feel, we want to use substances to numb that, right? And my job is to help people unpack all these years of whatever experiences they've gone through to reach the other side. And I always say that when you get into recovery, it's like a new life. It's a fresh start. For me, it was also about connecting back to my childhood, like to my inner child. And like how Agassi, how Aditya shared about going back to sport. For me, it was going back to singing. And I encourage my clients to also go back to their childhood, pick hobbies that they like doing, like the simplest things that give you pleasure. That really helps a lot, along with processing all the traumatic events.
And you coming from the world that they inhabit, that shared space of trying to deal with an addiction, does that help in the patient trusting you more? Do you feel there's a...
So I'm going to speak for myself.
Yeah, sure.
It helped me having someone like Azhar, guide me in this journey. It helped tremendously, because it was, if I realized that he has done it and he's gone through the same experience. I mean, not maybe the exact same, because we have people from all walks of life. One thing in common is the fact that we are addicted to a substance and we can't do without it, right? But the fact is that he had gone through that. He had had experiences that were similar to mine. He was addicted to a substance, and today he's here on the other side and he's helping people. And I said, what more can I, get right now? And I've been to people for help. I have been to many people, but none of them could really do what, he did. So,
Why should I come to you instead of going to, say, a rehab, which is, I think, the stereotypical answer to addiction?
Yeah,
I mean, I'm speaking from my...
No, great. Very good question. Now, so rehabs are an indispensable part of the whole system, right? But there's a big misconception that everybody who has an addiction has to go to rehab. Rehab, you got to think of rehab as surgery. Surgery is always the last option, right? You will try a whole bunch of other approaches, and if that doesn't work, then you need to go to rehab, right? So there are certain criteria. Like if you have a person who's got an addiction, which even a day is impossible, right, for them to stay clean, right? Then there's no amount of therapy, there's no amount of counseling you're going to be able to do. You're not going to be able to reach the person. So then placing a person in an environment in which they don't have access and they can get a concentrated blast of treatment can really be helpful. But that's a minority of people. The vast majority of people can recover on an outpatient basis. And that's one of the things that I'm really happy we're doing here, because there was no option in India to do what they call in the West outpatient treatment for addiction. Right? Either you went to a counselor and saw the counselor once a week, which would not make a dent in the issue, or you got to pack somebody to rehab. Now, rehab is a big decision. There's a cost that you go away from family. You got work obligations. Not everybody can afford that here, right? And it's not necessary for everybody. So you put those together. If you have a community-based program, right, which is a combination of individual, group, and family sessions, right? So we have groups 5 days a week. You have sessions. You do all of that, and you help people navigate the challenges that they were anyway going to have to face when they come back from rehab.
So just at the top of my head, rehab says rehabilitation of an individual, but in a space that is nothing like the real world. So
it's like a boot camp. Like as if you go to Vipassana, right? They'll teach you how to do that, right? You have to come out and practice it, right? But I don't want to knock rehab. Rehab is essential for a certain category of people. There is what they call in rehab, what we call discharge planning, right? So the 1 week before you leave rehab, that plan is everything. Right, because just in a control, so you're not only in that environment because you want to stop drinking. There's a lot of learning, a lot of therapy is going on. You identify your triggers, etc., and then you make a plan about how you're going to cope with it. In the West, what would happen is they would, after any rehab program, they will recommend an aftercare program, which is similar to what we have here, a combination of individual, group, and family sessions. Because rehab is just the start of your journey. A lot of people think that once I go to rehab, I'm cured. Boss, no, you've just learned a few tools. The application is out in the real world, no?
yeah. Have you had a case like this where you've been able to compare his experience with rehab and as to coming here in the real world setting and then trying to practice what you're teaching him?
I didn't follow, meaning?
For a person dealing with alcohol addiction, have you seen him respond better to this setting, which is part of his daily life, rather than go away?
Absolutely. But we see both. In all honesty, we have some people who come in here who can't even stay 3 days sober, right? And which is, you're not going to be, then we recommend rehab.
Yeah.
Right? But there are a larger percentage of people who come here and manage to get sober without having to go through rehab.
So there's a question that I had written down. Do people fail their treatment, or does the treatment fail the addict? Or
there's no failure.
There's no failure.
So it depends what you call failure, right? So you're going to fall off the bike before you learn how to ride a bicycle. Failure is if you refuse to get back onto the bike. Then you'll never learn.
The language that we are using around this, so where we use the word abuse vis-a-vis an addict, clean versus dirty. Are those words changing when it comes to treatment? Because when you say I'm clean, it signifies I was dirty.
There is a whole move, So words have meaning, right?
Yes.
And words have a lot of power. And so that's one way to look at it, right? If I'm getting clean, that's the way. So in the addiction recovery community, right, and this has created some contention in today's world, we own the term addict. And then people look at me and say, why are you calling yourself an addict? So I said, because I have an addiction. But why are you calling yourself an addict? Right? It's as if there's some derogatory term to it. Right? And what I've realized, right, is why most people in recovery will own the term. If you look at African American culture, right, there is the N word that was used as a horrible racial slur for the entire race, right? Today, nobody can use that word except themselves.
Sure.
Right? So there is a great deal of empowerment in which you take a term that was used as a slur against you and you own it. To which you say, okay, it has no power of me. I've removed the stigma from it.
Yeah.
Right? So that's the psychological piece of owning it. There is no shame associated with it. I would say I'm a diabetic. You can say I suffer from diabetes, or you can say I'm diabetic. If I'm afraid of the word diabetic or of the word addict, then it has power over me.
Okay. Yes.
Right? And the other thing is, if I'm an addict in the sense that, what does that mean to me today? it means that I cannot use substances in control. It doesn't mean anything else. It means that if I start drinking today, or if I start using today, it'll be a matter of time in which I go back to compulsive use, and everything that I've managed to build by God's grace over the last so many years will come to nothing. It is just an acknowledgement of that.
But 20 years plus clean, and you will still say, I am an addict.
Proudly so.
And it's also one of the labels we wear, right? At the end of the day, that is just one part of our lives.
Yeah.
It's probably one of the a very big part of our life, but that doesn't put us in a box
It doesn't define
which says
us.
that, oh, this is you. Every single thing we do defines us. This is just one part of it, and it gives us a huge amount of ownership on our own lives. I mean, I went through this. There is no shame in it. Let me tell you, when I first got sober, I was very skeptical about telling people. It wasn't that I was going out tooting, saying that, oh, by the way, I suffered from this, or by the way, whatever. I mean, you may go out and say, oh, I tore my ACL, and you may not go out and say that, I suffer from alcoholism in the same breath. But uh, there was a lot of stigma. I was extremely worried to uh, see who I would meet, and what people would think of me. And eventually it got to a point where, the only reason I share my story or whatever is that if even one person knows that I have suffered from this and can find solace in that and seek out help, that's enough for me. And we don't say it with, it's not a badge of honor. It's not, it's just that this is my life. There is no stigma around it. And um, if anyone is suffering from the same thing, at least they know who to talk to, because I understand it, Doc understands it, Ahaana understands it, and that's the reality of it. We by sharing our story, all we're trying to do is provide that if you are struggling from this, then you know who to reach out to, not from any other perspective, but just that someone who will understand it.
What you said is very true. When we use the word addict, I'm not saying that defines me in my totality. So I'm a father, I'm a son, I'm a friend, I'm a therapist, I'm an addict. These are all facets of me. None of these define me as a pure, this is the essence of Azhar.
It's not the first introduction to who you are.
Yeah, but I own it. It's yes, I have a problem with addiction. I'm an addict.
And this helps you with recovery or staying in recovery.
Yeah.
So I just want to add one thing there. Not to take away from what Azhar and Aditya said, because that is very true for us today, right? When we have enough clean time under our belt. But when people just get into recovery, they come in with a loss of identity. There is no identity left, right? You used to be a person who used to start the party, who was the person who everyone would look up to have a good time and all of that. And until you reach your dark days of, isolating and using all by yourself. So you come in without any identity. So for a person like that, to get into recovery and own that, okay, today I am an addict, and the meaning of addict is not that not in the way the world looks at it, right? But for you understand that, okay, I have this disease, I'll own this identity for a while, and like you said, that is what helps you to get into recovery easier, because it gives you an identity for a time when there's nothing that you have. You come in battered and bruised, right? Rock bottom. And that's when that helps you. It helps a lot of people in that moment.
Have you had a case where someone's come in battered, bruised, and it's left a mark and you feel broke your heart or you couldn't help, and a story in which you wish you could have done something more or less? Or
Yeah. Unfortunately, quite a few. So, see, the biggest stumbling block, right, to getting well is not being able to accept that I have a problem. I'm struggling to think of somebody who couldn't get well because of some amount of bruising and battering. That's not so much the problem, right? You may have been living in a mahal and you may have ended up on the streets. Your wife may have taken the 3 kids and gone. You may be in financial ruin. I've seen all those people get well. right? No matter how far down the elevator you think you've gone, right? There is a way up out of that, right? So that's not the battering and the bruising. The inability to accept that this is a problem is what will keep you stuck. The rock bottom that you keep hearing about is not a physical space. It's an emotional space.
So you have so many public figures, have been movies made on them, Whitney Houston, Elvis Presley, all who've died of alcohol and other substance addiction and overuse. And most of those movies chart the same track that you're saying. It's an emotional wound
Yeah.
or mental trauma that they are
Yeah.
trying to.
Yeah. So it's a celebrity, right? Celebrity to create. So it's not celebrity, right? Celebrity is one profession in which you're in the spotlight, you're constantly being observed, and there's a high degree of stress. But any career that has a high degree of stress, right? Whether it could be athletes, right? It could be your bankers and investors. Okay, you see very high degrees of addiction there. They will have the trappings of success.
Yeah.
Right? So like I was saying, it's not what you, that's not what the problem, the issue is. The issue is something inside gets broken, right? And like what Aditya said earlier, right? What really gets broken somewhere, this emotional bottom, is how I start thinking and feeling about myself. There is, for a lot of us, we come to a point, no matter how we mask it in front of, if you're a celebrity in front of your cameras or in front of your social group, no matter how much bravado you mask it with, right? Inside, you know somewhere deep inside that there's almost a sense of disgust with what I'm doing with my life.
Lack of self-worth.
Yeah, one level deeper, much
Yeah.
self-worth, self-esteem goes in the toilet. There is a disgust and a loathing. And despite that, I'm unable to stop.
That-
So that takes you to a very dark place in your head, right? And once the journey starts from there. That's when the actual rock bottom comes. I cannot do this anymore.
So even though it's a physical malfunction of wanting to drink so much, it's
The
more of an
emotional damage that it causes. So the biological processes will take the addiction wherever it goes, right? That's just the biology. Parallelly, what's happening to me emotionally as a human being, right? No matter how much of bluster and bravado I try to mask it with, I can't do this the way I want to do it. I'm not doing this. Somewhere I know.
Again, going back to what you said, biopsychosocial.
Social, yeah.
So I think one of the best definitions that we like to use is, one is addiction is an inability to process emotion. At least I love this. Inability to process emotion in a healthy way. That's one. And the second is, a lot of us are, or at least were at that time, megalomaniacs with low self-esteem. I think that's the best way to
That's
put
the one
it.
you'll hear with
What
egomania.
is, break it down for me.
I think basically, if I have to break this down, is we suffer from low self-esteem, and to cover that up, we do outrageous things.
Do you
Right?
identify
Oh,
with
yeah,
this?
yeah.
Do you as well?
Yeah. So that's
So
one of
give
the
me an
things.
example, small example.
So, I think one of the most absurd things that I had to do was there always had to be an after party at my house, right? I always called 40 random people home. I didn't have to do it, but I wanted to be there till the end. I wanted to show that, without me, the party would not happen. I wanted to do stuff like that, but it became a norm, right? The 40 people, I have no idea where they are today. But the point is, whoever I caught at a bar, I'm like, okay, my house, my house, my house. And I'm like, when I go back and think about it, how ridiculous was that?
So there is an insecurity, what he's talking about, very true, right? So if there ever insecurity that I'm not going to be loved or I'm not going to be popular, right? And that's a common enough insecurity, right? What we would do is we would not want to be loved. I want to be the most loved. So I will overcompensate, right? So instead of saying I want to be loved, that's very normal. I would want to be loved, but I'm insecure that I won't be loved. But if the party is at my house and 40 people are coming and everybody is saying, wow, Aditya, you're a dude, right? So that's the egomania. That is, I need something so much of adulation to compensate for the insecurity and the inadequacy that I'm feeling. And none of us are aware of this till we come into recovery.
The Gatsby syndrome, if there is something like that.
What's that?
Like the Great Gatsby's, where he had so many
Yeah, yeah,
insecurities,
yeah.
but he had the most outlandish
Lavish parties. Yeah, yeah. right?
Yeah.
So that's a very common trait that you see. Inability to handle emotions. Ahaana mentioned this earlier. Again, not diagnostic of addiction, but we tend to be highly sensitive people. God forbid we're going to let you ever see that. Right? But
So, with such sensitive minds and souls that we are as human beings, just catch us four in a room. Does social media drive alcohol addiction? Because I'm guessing the lack of your presence or whatever you want to achieve or just being on it, I'm trying to piece the dots, causes lack of self-worth, which
no,
makes me feel, let me just have a drink.
so you're hitting upon a very, very important topic, right? And we are just beginning to understand this now. So social media is the nexus, it's this diabolical nexus of where your neurobiology meets an algorithm, right? Um, okay, so from 0 to 12, right, what's the most, if you look at developmental psychology, right, 0 to 12, the most important thing is for the child is your parents' approval,
Yeah.
right? From 12 to 24, it becomes your peer group approval. And then from 24, it becomes your career, and then after that, it becomes your kids, and there's a whole this thing. Now, when we were growing up before social media, your comparison group was the 25 kids in your class and maybe a few cousins.
That's it.
So you had 25 ways of feeling shitty about yourself. Right? Now you're on social media. Your comparison group and the ways to feel crappy about yourself are now in the millions. Right? So what's happening is so there's a gazillion ways now to feel bad about yourself, right? And to hammer your self-esteem.
So true.
You compensate for that by wanting likes, right? So the likes is the dopamine, right? So every time you get a like, it's a dopamine, right? So the neurobiology is giving you this dopamine spike, so you're seeking that out more. You may not be getting the 4,000 units, but you're getting enough to keep it seeking. You got an algorithm that is feeding you more, right? So what's going to happen? So it's exploited this human need for approval or appreciation of your peers. It has put that on steroids.
Like your wine shop delivering non-stop.
Yeah.
Oh God.
It's like you're mainlining attention, right? And for a 12-year-old or 13-year-old, it is incredibly powerful.
So it's laying down the roadworks or foundations
Yeah.
of a potential problem in the
Yeah.
future in
Yeah.
terms of addiction as well.
It is. Yeah. It can be an addiction by itself. It can be again. See you see it so often, right? If you look at addiction as three variables, right? The preoccupation, the loss of control, and the consequences. You'll see 1,000 kids right now who are 14 who can't wait for them when they can pick up their phone.
You're talking
Right?
about every
Right?
14-year-old.
I need to pick up mine. So
other.
the preoccupation of who's messaging me, how many likes I got, that's the preoccupation. The loss of control is, okay, I'll spend only half an hour on my phone and the next, then you're doom scrolling for 3 hours. That's loss of control. Consequences, I'm not being able to pay attention to my studies, I'm not hanging out with my family. It meets all the criteria.
So where we spoke of addiction being a biological deficiency, can social media be creating more of these deficiencies
100%.
where there were none?
Absolutely. Now, that's not to say social media doesn't have an upside.
Yeah, sure.
But it also, it's very real. And we're just waking up. See, a lot of times, we'll hear, oh, ye to sab fad hai, ye to sab fad. And it's not a fad, boss. It's a real issue. I mean, there are countries now that are banning social media under the age of 16. Australia has done it. And there's another country that's doing it. And there's a reason that people are getting seriously alarmed. Because the algorithms are incredibly sophisticated, man.
Have you encountered any obstacles in your journey or in your mission where you'd like to talk about it or touch upon it?
Lots of obstacles. Like,
A few big obstacles in where you'd like an ideal.
You're talking about us as individuals, or you're talking about mindset?
As you as an addiction doctor, if you had an ideal goal or a pathway or a journey to which you're going towards, what are your major obstacles that you've encountered in the past or are encountering right now?
So in India, ever since I've come back here, it's always been deepening layers of awareness. I mean, it's just that there is so much stigma. So we are a country that's developing, right? We're just coming in to the world stage, right? But so even though we may be getting there technologically and hopefully financially, culturally we're not there. Culturally, we're very, very Indian and we're very rightly proud of being Indian, right? But culture, like every culture, has its upside and its downside. So the layers that one has to go through to get people to acknowledge that this is a real thing, right? This is an issue. The awareness raising has constantly been a challenge. But that's baked in the pie. There's also great reward when you have breakthroughs to it. The second is, it's as the age-old thing, the stigma, right? What comes in the way. So even if you create awareness, ke chalo, yeah, these are conditions, then how do you break through the stigma about getting people to access help? So those continue to be on challenges, right? At some day, I would hope that insurance in India would cover mental health and this thing.
Does not right now.
So addiction, actually rehab. So health insurance in India is what? It's not health insurance, it's hospital insurance, right? They don't pay for your doctor's visits like they do in the West. If you go to hospital, rehabs are technically covered, but they're required to be covered, but not many companies cover them. Outpatient ka to chodo hi nahi, right? So
That's a big area.
That's a big area. That's a whole policy area, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is the education, right? To get a master's degree, we have a lot of educational institutions in India, right? We have a lot of colleges, right?
Yeah.
So the caliber of the coursework is in question, and you're talking about a job crisis in India and the engineering field. You get people coming out. Right? Psychology has the same issue, right? There has to be more rigor in the curriculum. There are some institutions that are doing a great job. Would you believe that there is no official way to become an addiction counselor in India?
No, I can't believe it. There is none?
You can get your master's degree, but in most countries you need a specialization after
Sure.
that. That's not there, yeah.
Not yet. That's a big call out.
Yeah.
And in a country that's made education one of their core values for the next 10 years.
Yeah. So there's a lot. So if you talk at an individual level for a person in recovery, for a small organization like Mindset, or if you talk about the national stage, we're just starting the conversation about mental health, you know. And however discouraging it may be to others, for somebody like me to have seen we have at least here is very encouraging. Like, 10 years ago, when I came back, or 15 years ago, snowball's chance in hell, man, that we'd be doing something like this.
But then there's a huge opportunity. So for
Massive opportunity.
someone who's watching this and who has a pool of capital to invest, they can put up an institution that allows addiction courses, so that you're trained therapists.
Yeah, we honestly believe in the next 20 years, like in the 90s, suddenly everybody started talking about health,
Yeah.
right? And we all became health conscious. I believe we are at that inflection point for mental health. I think COVID has made a big difference. From all the crap that COVID brought into our life, it put mental health as a legitimate issue, right? And so there is a growing interest in mental health, right? And we are at that point that I think in the next 10, 20 years, this is going to be, thankfully, a big space.
And if the policy change happens at the insurance level, where a common man knows that he's being covered, and he can walk in more confidently into a therapist rather than worried about his that many thousands of rupees getting spent on himself even more.
Right, and there's a lot we can do. If you're talking about the national level, so tech is going to be the way to go, right? So me, I'm a dinosaur. I still love the face-to-face sessions, but online they're going to be digital. All your kids are digital natives, right? If you're going to get into tier 2 India, right, we simply don't have that many psychologists.
But that's a good question that has just come up. Not a good question. A question that I have is, has money been an issue ever for one of your cases where they've stopped coming for treatment because of money?
Yeah.
And then
So we have to do a sliding scale, but not even some people can afford that. Money is an issue. We are sitting in South Bombay. This is privilege, right? There's a whole world outside of that, right? And there are systems that need to be built. So telehealth, telemedicine, telepsychiatry, counseling is going to be life-saving when you don't have access. So would you prefer face-to-face? Yes, I would prefer to drive a Ferrari. Great. But there's a lot that can be done at that level. That's a whole different podcast, I think.
Yeah. Okay, there are two hot button issues. I'm quoting Dr. Hakim. There are two hot button issues that we need to address. One is, I may be wrong in the way I'm pronouncing this, psilocybin and its effects in treating addiction disorders. And the other is the role of cannabis in its treatment that we briefly touched upon. Can we do a deep dive into these two?
There are actually, so psychedelics, psilocybin being one of them, there's a lot of research that's going on around the world about these being used in the treatment of not only addiction, but a whole host of mental health disorders. Psychedelics also have been drugs that us people with addictions have been very fond of in the past.
What are some examples of
So acid, LSD is one. Magic mushrooms, which is psilocybin, is another. Now there's ayahuasca. There are a lot of these psychedelics. So what do these psychedelic drugs do? They give you a mind-altering experience. So these have been drugs that have been abused in the past. And therefore, for many years, they were banned and there was no research that could be done. Around 10 years ago, they've opened up because they... So for example, there's a drug called ecstasy, right? It's a club drug. Ecstasy was first developed in the 1970s as a treatment for PTSD.
post-traumatic stress disorder?
Right? Because ecstasy would create... So when you're doing treatment for post-traumatic stress disorder, you're asking people to revisit really painful memories, which can be very challenging. So they thought small doses of this molecule that they designed would help them access it, and they found very promising results. Till some ingenious kid figured out, hey, I can get high of this stuff, right? And that created a whole different problem, so they banned it. When they banned it, all the research stopped, right? Now, 10 years ago, they've started doing the research, and there are very promising studies. They're exploring ketamine, they're exploring psilocybin, they're exploring a whole bunch of treatments that are there in various stages of clinical trials. So is this going to be a mainstay, or is this going to be a big feature of treatment in the future, maybe 5, 10 years down the line? Absolutely. Are we there now? Absolutely not. Right? Because we don't have the science yet. So you'll see a lot of this on social media. You'll see a lot of this on YouTube, right? About the benefits, all of this. First and foremost, in India, so it's illegal. If I try to prescribe any of this stuff, I'll lose my license. Secondly, the evidence is emerging, right? To say something that this is an effective cure, you have to do 3 stages of clinical trials, right? You got to get the dosage right. You got to understand the side effects. So we are still 5 years or 6 years away, or maybe a little less for psilocybin in certain conditions. In popular culture, right, these are now been designed as the wonder drugs. And anybody tell me there's a wonder drug that is going to solve all your problems, every red alarm goes off in my head, right? So there are centers in the world now, okay, in which you can go and actually get these treatments.
In a medical setting?
In a medical setting.
Or wonder setting?
In a medical setting. There are wonder settings, please stay away from those. In medical settings, if you do your research, because these are the experimental sites in which funded research is going on. These are medical centers that have got funded by the National Institutes of Health or various other funding organizations in which actual experimental medicine is being done, and they're recruiting people for treatment. So what they're trying to do is to figure out the right dose and the right quantity for this thing. Also, there is no psychedelic treatment that is now even being investigated as a standalone. It is always coupled with therapy, right? If you go onto social media, listen to a lot of your listeners, you'll think you're going to do a 2-day ayahuasca trip and you attain nirvana. It's not going to happen, right? In fact, it may open up a whole bunch of stuff, right? But I do believe it's very promising. If you look down the line 5-7 years, it's going to be an incredible help for treatment of not only addiction, but a whole bunch of other conditions. The other one that they're exploring right now is the GLP is not this thing. And this thing, what they figured out is, so they use it for appetite suppression. So initially for diabetes, right?
Okay.
The only time you could actually get away this thing short was if you had diabetes. Then it became a weight loss thing. So now people have said, forget diabetes. If I want to lose weight, I'm going to take this, right? And they found that it works.
So Ozempic or GLP-1 drugs help with alcohol addiction?
So initial studies. So the thinking is this, right? How are they helping with weight loss? What they're reducing people's appetite, right? And therefore the craving for food. So there are initial studies being done that if it could reduce, it can suppress cravings for food. It might be able to suppress cravings for alcohol and maybe other substances. So very, very early stages, right? But if you follow social media, in 3 months, somebody will say there's a wonder cure for alcohol addiction. These are promising directions, right? But we're not there yet.
But always in tandem with your cognitive therapy or emotional therapy.
Yeah.
So as a society, do you think we're headed in the right direction when it comes to talking about the language of addiction, the stigma, the way we deal with humanizing the problem?
Mm-hmm. I still think we have a long way to go. I think today the number of people who are still drawn by the stigma of alcoholism and alcohol use, and even more so with substance abuse, it is a lot, and we see it on a day-to-day basis, right? We've seen enough and more people who do not want to accept that either their spouse has a problem, either their children have a problem. This is one of the things which is very easy to sweep under the rug because of what our social surroundings will say. And I think one of the biggest challenges today is, and I would love to, if Ahaana would touch on this, is, women in recovery. I think for women, it is even harder than what I think us guys go through.
So you're saying that alcohol addiction is a space shared equally by women and men, or in similar quantities, or?
Yeah. So Anna can maybe you should take this. Yeah, but in I'll tell you, yes, diabetes can happen to men or women, no?
But we're so conditioned to thinking
Lady
that
like behavior nahi hai na? How can lady become alcoholic?
you guys, I mean, do you find a lot of women coming in with
Yeah.
alcohol?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
So why it's tougher for women is because the society expects them to be in a particular way, controlled, nurturing, balanced, the caretakers, right? And when a girl child is born, it's on sugar and spice and all things nice, right? That girl child then grows up to having an addiction which cannot be accepted by the society we live in and culturally. Addiction in itself is a stigma, right? Now with women, it's even bigger. And it often goes unchecked because either they are mothers, so they have to take care of their children at home. They're homemakers. That's what they're doing. They may not have a job, but they have an addiction. They cannot leave their kids and try to seek recovery or seek treatment. The other thing is they are looked down at being and a problem, not just because of being women, but it's also because of the roles that they are playing as a mother, as a caregiver.
But do you find a lot of cases where women have come in seeking help?
yeah.
A lot of
Can you
women.
describe some without names, like the case of how can a mother have an addiction problem? She has to get on and take care of the child. What would her addiction problem look like?
So a mother can have an addiction problem because she's human. Before being a mother and a woman and all those things, because she's human, she can have the same issues, but the society will not allow that. The family that she's growing up in will not allow that. So when she gets into treatment is much later as opposed to what would have been required. A man having a problem is looked at as a problem, but a woman having a problem is looked at even more of a moral failing than a man.
Imagine this, right? I mean, anyway, addiction is looked at as a moral failing, right? So when a man comes into recovery, it's a massive moral failing. When we look at a woman, especially as a mother, one is you're expected in Indian society to play these roles of, the perfect mother, perfect daughter-in-law, perfect partner, all of these things, and all of a sudden the moral failing and the shame put on that oh, how can you fail your children, right? I mean, that part attracts a whole amount of other stigma to it, and it's really brutal, right? I mean, on what, so the courage that the women who come in here, I think it's phenomenal, right? And it's phenomenal that they acknowledge that they have a problem and they want to get help. And it's one thing we always say, that how can you be there for anybody else? Like on an airplane, they tell you to wear an oxygen mask first before helping other people. And everyone in recovery has seen that if you get help first, you're able to be a productive member of your family, of society, of whoever else around you. But you need to sort yourself out first. And I genuinely think that we need to be in a space where we promote this for other people. I mean, what's wrong with getting help? I mean, people go to the gym every day to work out and feel good and be healthy. What's wrong with getting your mind sorted out as well? I think we don't put enough emphasis on this, and I'm quite I mean, like, it always riles me up that how more and more people don't feel the need. I mean, there's so much shame about talking to other people.
There is a greater embarrassment, maybe acknowledging there's a female member in your family that needs attention for alcohol.
Why? We live in, I mean, today everyone's promoting equality, right?
Yeah.
Gender equality is something that everyone's talking about,
You bring up a really good point, right? Even your first visceral reaction. So your question was, how is she going to be able to be a mother, right? And then, so if I were to give you some stories, right, about without naming people, about their journeys and how they were not able to be the best mother at that time, the human brain will instinctively jump to judgment,
Yeah.
right? And that's what keeps people, the women, from seeking help. Our first thought, right,
Is to judge.
is to judge, right? She wasn't there with. She used to go out in the night and leave her kids alone. She didn't take care of her kids' homework. The kids were in the other room crying, and she was sitting in the other room drinking. Right? The capacity for compassion, right? If a man was doing that, you would also say it's not school, but the level of judgment.
And expectation from a female in her role in society is higher.
Higher, right? So even as we're sitting here and we're talking about it, right? The same situation, a guy sitting in the living room when drinking, when the kid is in the bedroom all alone, maybe crying, a man is an idiot, nonsense bloody behavior. Woman is doing that. That is disgraceful. The medical condition is the same. Whosoever has the condition will behave the same way. So women, when they come into recovery, particularly moms, okay, have that extra layer of guilt to work through. It's that whole extra thing. Blaming the woman though is part of patriarchy. Right? You see it on steroids here. Yeah. And then these are moms, you have young girls. Right? But then it's just a different level.
So instantly, I remember last week I'm sitting with a cousin and he says, my business associate has stopped taking his wife out at night because she's developed an alcohol problem that started at a family wedding that he took her to. So now he keeps her at home.
Yeah.
But there
And
must
that's the other thing that happens.
Yeah,
huh?
the silence, right?
The
They
silence
at home
around
and-
it. There's so much embarrassment about it. तुम घर पे बैठ के पियो, बाहर मत आओ. But you can't go to a counselor because that's going to bring disgrace. If you go to rehab, what will I tell my family?
And then a second instance where the only way the family found out is when the watchman comes up and says, these empty cans of Bacardi breezers have been found in the building compound and it's being chucked from your flat.
So a woman's journey, so there is internalized shame, na? तुम्हारी judgment तो अलग बात है. The internalized shame that I feel because as a woman you bought into the role of mother or daughter, you anyway bought into with a certain amount of sacrosanctness, na? So as a man, if I'm feeling I'm not providing for my family, okay, there's some shame along with that. If I'm not taking care of my child.
So what do you think will change this attitude towards women and alcohol addiction?
Going back to understanding this is a medical condition. Whosoever has a medical condition means there are signs, symptoms, and progression. Equal opportunity employer, right? Doesn't care if you're black, white, male, female, सबको होता है.
At the end of the day, men and women both get cancer. They both need to be treated equally.
Yeah.
To look at it the same way, right? I mean, there cannot be different levels of care
Or
across
compassion.
or compassion across gender, and I think that's really unfortunate. And while like we said earlier, it's the stigma around it needs to be dropped. I mean, we need to be talking about this more. We need to be kind and compassionate to people who cannot stop because it's not out of choice, it's not out of willpower. And I think one of the things that we need to acknowledge, it's because it is a disease.
So if we're being 100% honest, is there any topic that we should have spoken about that we've not covered in this podcast as yet?
I think we've spoken about a lot.
Yeah.
There is one thing I do want to add. There are these two fellowships, Alcoholics Anonymous and Narcotics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous started in the US in 1935 and there's Narcotics Anonymous, I think, started in the 50s. They're a free resource in the community. right? They have daily meetings they're meeting on a regular basis, on a daily basis actually, for people who want help from alcohol or from any other substances, and it's free of cost, right? So while therapy costs, right, there are free resources in the community. The websites are available everywhere, and a lot of our clients also find them extremely helpful.
Okay. Thank you. And thank you for the work that you are doing. I would say that you're the change makers of a much needed change in our society and for the country.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for taking the time.
Thank you.
Really,
Thank
thanks
you.
for taking the time.
Thank you.